Hello, beautiful people. I have a testimony to release to you today. But first, I'll share some events about a couple things in Oklahoma. A lot of high strangeness happened in Oklahoma. There was a couple cloning centers in Oklahoma, actually. And one of them was from the OA and the octopus scene and Prairie and Tinseltown, Prairie Surf. A lot of things happened in both of those places. A lot of pretty crazy things, scary things, but also some funny things too. There was some victories at both places and many other cloning centers because they couldn't contain certain fragments, spirits, souls, consciousnesses, bodies, and people that they would try to bring there. And they kept backfiring on them over and over again. So what happened with Tinseltown was that the kids actually ended up breaking out of the bricks, just like the Kool-Aid Man broke out of the brick wall. And they had victory over that spot because that had some underground connections and some nefarious activity for a while. So these were captive zones. And they were erased from a lot of people's memories too, because of the victories that happened in these places. So in the 80s, kids just kept killing it at places, and then a lot of terminology came from certain events that were supernatural events, such as the Kool-Aid Man breaking out of that wall, and things that got embedded and encoded into cartoons, movies, music, because a lot of that stuff comes from underground bases. It's a whole nother world down there. And the creative aspects that are hijacked and stolen, and intellectual property vaults. And Where's the Beef also came from the Pedivore Wars, and asking Red at a diner that wasn't actually making real hamburger meat, where's the beef? The kids kept asking, where's the beef? All the time. So there's one place. Oh, there's just so many. Okay, well, there's one park actually that was an interloper park. Interlopers are like in Dark City. They have the slider people, and these are very like dark, pale, white, like Nazi-looking men that kind of like slide through time, and they time stalk and they slide everywhere. They're like time stalkers. Well, we saw things like that because we were interfacing with technology that had to do with time travel and hyperspace, hypercubes, and things that most people have never seen or encountered. So sometimes we would see these things come out of like pocket voids, pocket dimensions, pocket realms, and we knew how to deal with the unfolding and folding of things like that. That's beyond quantum physics, because we were shown the schematics, as I've said before, of celestial mechanics and the higher realms, and taught by angels themselves to be able to be moved on God's chessboard through time and preserved as he is playing 5D chess, and he moves everything, and kings even on the earth, as water between his fingers. And these other players in the Kingdom of Darkness are still playing checkers. So they became very predictable, and the spots that they had, their strongholds, buildings, places, and you could calculate it to a time to go in and say to rescue, or to calculate the probability of what they would do, because their vision is so dim and they don't have the light of heaven that illuminates and quickens and brings that higher knowledge that comes from heaven and that wisdom that comes from heaven. So we call these things interlopers. There was many different kinds. Like there's many different creatures and creations and species we saw on crafts and created throughout this universe, this multiverse. So what these things were trying to do is like they were like riding your coattails and Silver Surfer was coined as something that you could do to ride time waves. And to see time waves is like a gift. To see the time continuum, to ride the time continuum. So, in certain instances and places, we would see these interlopers. And these interlopers were literally trying to ride our coattails and then cut into the fabric of reality. Because we've seen reality shift, reality bend, and things like that happen around us a lot. So they were stopped from doing that at one spot, and this became a neutral platform and a neutral zone because so many areas were warred over. And it became just a static neutral ground. So we could turn places into that static neutral ground. And some ancient beings we also saw come up from a cave, which was the same thing that happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota. These were tall Lemurians, like 9 to 12 feet tall, that lived underground, and usually the government seals them up with double sealed caves and stuff. But somehow these ones were very tall and skinny. We thought they were Nephilim at first, but they weren't. They were walking around. They were like tall elders, they called themselves, but they were doing unsanctioned grid work in Oklahoma. So they had artificial tesseracts. They were reading from an ancient book, and we learned from their geometric designs and whatnot that they had got this technology, techniques really from ancient Lemuria. And we taught them the right way, showed them the gospel, and because everybody has a choice. If you present the gospel to any spirit, it has a choice to choose because we have free will. So they understood what they were doing was wrong, and they tried to change or do reversal of what they were doing because they didn't understand that what they were taught was complete reversal. And what they would do is they would try to change the Schumann resonance and the frequency and the accord of a place into a black heart. So they would lay the design of the black heart, and this got into the dark arts and the dark occult, because the heart and the heart energy is the strongest, of course, and the heart's a stargate. So they would try to reverse that to make an area polluted and toxic and beating to an inverted pattern and connected to the overlay and false reality system, of course, to beat as a black heart, instead of what we're supposed to be doing is opening up our heart and having that pure organic connection to our creator. So those are just a few things, but the testimony that I have to release is about what we called the Tower of Doom, and this was also called the Devil's Tower. Sometimes we called it that, Devin's Tower. And this place, this is a very strange thing about some of these buildings. This is the most fucked up building I've ever had an experience with in my life. But the strangest part about these buildings is that we were taken out of time so many times, if you can wrap your mind around that. And say we would like go from like 1980, and they would pull us into like 2018. So we'd end up at these places and have to deal with so much shifting and in the timeline, and be able to calibrate and be able to deal with everything that they could throw at you, because you're dealing with dark overlords and those who wish to change time and control aspects of reality. So this building we had actually seen in the future from the past, but what they were doing in there was that they brought me there one time. I think it was nighttime. And this building was like Star Wars to us. We called it like the Star Wars building, because it looked to us, we saw the AI in it. That's what we could see. We could look at a building, map it out, see what was going on in there, but we could also see into, say, static lines, frequency, and be able to, the AI would immediately try to connect to a child that was brought in there. Say if they were going to do a ritual or a sacrifice, you would automatically hear like a Bluetooth connection trying to connect to you. So you'd have to block that out first of all. And what you would hear is this like metallic resonance that would reverberate from the AI system in the building, like all the way to the top to the bottom and whatever was underneath in the floor of that building too, because they create them to have like a Babylonian tower resonance to them. And and these places are connected to portals, to other systems, to stars, to realms. So then you see into the spirit and you can see all those connections. So that's why they use a lot of kids as like star maps, because they knew all these things and they could go places that the Dark Lords couldn't go to or have access to. So I was taken there and then processed through this round rotunda thing, and it really was like a Sith Lord was in there, because these were high level sorcerers. So of course at night they put on their black robes, and when you see their faces in the spirit, you see the details, you see the decay. And they use Sith Lord in Star Wars because one of these, I don't know if they're hybrids or probably a hybrid of fallen DNA. They do have like stripes and lines within their face, and their eyes shift, and they did manifest horns. So when they uncloaked their black hoods, so then I was brought up the elevator and brought up to the top upper levels, and we were creating in the good Secret Space program our own upper spiritual echelon, and had mapped out all of the experiences, beings, and benevolent things. So in there, it was the complete opposite. So some of us were prepared when they would take us to just erratic, crazy moves like this on their checkerboard. So they get to the top of the building, and it was the most terrifying thing, because I could hear whispering each level of the floor as you were going up, and you could hear the AI, you could hear the connections, because they had already been doing rituals way before you would even get there. And then at the very top level, I looked over into this round circle pit area that now I believe is a dining hall, and there was these big red hanging like cocoons. I don't know what else to describe them as, but in these cocoons, with whatever they had hanging there, they were like pulsating and breathing, and they were trying to speak to you. They had consciousness, and that really freaked me out, because I didn't quite see everything that was in those things, because you were trying to focus on yourself and how you're going to get out of the situations like that. And you could see inside of those cocoons alien faces. And these faces weren't just like a body. These faces were manifestations of different star systems manifesting to you as like a principality that was like in its own little talking bubble, I would call it. So it was being bombarded and accosted by many different creations at once. So this place was so evil. I really can't describe how evil this place was, but you go out of this area and then you go into the upper area where they have an upside down triangle, and then they already had a triangles, sigils laid up on the top floor. And what they do is they activated somehow like a green ring of fire at the top, which was fully lit at the end of the ritual that they were doing. And the sickest thing that they did, though, was they put a black cross above this area that was like a circle pit that had the red hanging things. And this is why it's not about me, it's not about you, it's all about the Creator. It's all about mocking the Creator, it's all about blaspheming the Creator. That is their biggest objective in all of these things. So they just take what they know is already God's, and then they try to hurt God with it, which are His children. So this brought the wrath of God. It wasn't me. It wasn't... I take no credit for this. It was what I'm trying to say. It's all glory, honor, power goes to Yahushua, Jesus Christ, because it was all about Him. And it was all about... See, what they try to do is they try to accomplish, out of their spite and out of their pathetic attempts, they try to accomplish as if they could hurt the Creator. He was hurt when He came to earth, but He willingly gave His life down and laid it and resurrected Himself and overcame every evil work with His blood. He dissolved every evil work on this earth with a drop of His blood. So that's the most powerful substance that's ever touched this earth, that came from heaven. So nothing they can do when they deal with the blood can stand against. Nothing. So God taught me a huge lesson up there, and they actually do things like this with kids, which is what a lot of people don't seem to remember or talk about. And it goes back to Druid times. They can tie you to a tree. They can bleed you out on a tree. When a tree and the Stoicheon fields in nature, we're stewards of nature in that kingdom, because there is a kingdom, many kingdoms on this earth, taste a drop of blood, then that tree can become an evil tree. And there's sacred ancient evil trees that they use for rituals then. And they actually grow blood thorns. So the trees can get corrupted. Nature can get corrupted. Everything inherited the curse. The animal kingdom. Lions sodomize each other. Things like that in nature were not supposed to function and act like that. And that's why the lion will lay down with the lamb at the end of the ages. So even trees, the Bible has a lot to say about trees. They can respond to their Creator, Yahuwah, and they can return to their first love. And it can change an atmosphere, it can change an environment, and it can change a territory when you take stewardship over nature too. So they know these things, and they bring these ancient things to these rituals, and you got to know like what the strong man is, where they're generating their power from, and break it with the Spirit of God and His blood. So if we're covered in the blood, we have this barrier around us. We have a blood barrier. We have a bloodline barrier, and that can't be crossed. It can paralyze people. So anyways, back to the upper top ritual. They had the black cross, and what they were doing with this black cross is that they actually were trying to crucify children on this cross. And they had gotten away with some of these rituals, they were sacrificing children up there, and that's why the place had to be stopped. Ritual sites like this, if they can't get out of control or get too powerful, because it can create such a schism in the area, and it can just totally destroy a city. So they did successfully end up doing these things to some children on that black cross, and then the cross would fall down into the circle pit, and then those things would come out of the cocoons and feed off of that black cross. So they were trying to eat the the antimatter and perversion of the finished work and the work that was done on the cross, which was the most profane, concocted ritual that I've ever seen in my life. Because you understand that things that come from Lucifer's mind are given to AI, are given to laboratories, are given to scientists, and that's a seed and a thought in our minds. So when we have the power of the Holy Spirit, we actually can have the mind of Christ, the mantle of Christ, to move mountains. And none of those seed thoughts, none of those evil inclinations and things like that would even be able to take root in our mind, because we are rooted and grounded in love. So that was something that was blacked out. The Black Cross was blacked out from my mind for a long time. And what they did in the, which is now a dining area. So you have to be careful sometimes where you eat. And if you don't get a good feeling from a place, or there's certain symbols or red flags, just pray about it and don't even eat there, because I run across these places all the time. And what was really also crazy about the upper level of this place was that it looked like you were on another planet that night, because of every supernatural thing that was going on. And looking out the windows, you could see all the lights down there, and they would threaten to throw you out the windows. So really all you could do is just hover in a ball and plead for God to protect you. And you could feel what I could feel when this was going on. What I saw come into the building was this cloud, and this cloud was super thick, and it was circling the top of the building where the triangle was. And in this cloud were a bunch of principalities and things that were coming down, because it was an open gate, it was an open portal there. And so these faces and all these things were just in a cloud. It was a super cloud, and it was swirling around the top too. And this cloud was like going through my mind, so I was like processing and seeing all of the evil things that were being like siphoned through the top of this place. And when I touched the Black Cross, that's when things really changed up there, because it could have killed me. It was full of black goo, for one, and this type of black goo that comes straight from another planet, that's brought here, that is fresh and like black oil, it can infiltrate your skin so fast, and you basically have to purge it out of your eyes, which looks like black snakes coming out of your eyes, or out of your orifices right away, or it'll take hold too fast and corrupt all your systems. So we have to be solidified in our constitution and our composition, just like a strong tower in God's presence, abiding in Him and loving Him, and He will strengthen us and grow us in that root of love, to be able to withstand the gates of hell, to be able to withstand anything that is in the darkness, so we don't fear it. So anyways, the lesson in all this that God taught me was that as I was trying to hover and block out all these horrible things, I felt angelic wings around me. I felt comfort. I felt peace. And God's shalom, His peace, will guard your heart. It'll guard your mind. He says He'll make our minds stronger than their minds, our foreheads stronger than their foreheads, because that seal is on our foreheads, and it's actually in every one of our cells when we're blood bought and His own. But what He really, really, really wanted to hit at that point was that when they invoked His wrath with this mockery crucifixion and trying to take some of His children out of the timeline, what happened is that God will not be mocked, for one. And I have never seen or experienced fear like this in my life, to where you tremble, to where the angels would tremble. And now God can show me in holy laughter how he laughs in derision at his enemies. But because he sees everything and searches everything. His eyes are like lamps of fire. He knows every one of these spots in every town, every village, every city. There's nothing that he can't see, because he's the beginning and the end of everything. And what he was driving into my spirit was that he came down as a bright flashing light. Now this light was like white fiery light. It was like white fiery rods, like sparking all over. And that white fiery light, the white fire rods, is something that I haven't seen since, this was on a much, much bigger level though. I haven't seen this since Anubis Oculus in Oregon, where there was lion men that had black fire rods, strange fire rods that they were holding in their hand. And that was a part of AI that was driving them, because these were created in a lab, these lion men of Moab that they recreated. But the white fiery rod light was like a crackle, and it came right through the ceiling, and it crackled and sparked, and it was pure piezoelectric white lightning that came straight from the crystal throne, straight from underneath the throne of heaven, because there is constant thunder and lightnings from under heaven. And this light, my eyes were already getting infected with the black goo, so it like dispelled that, and I couldn't see all of it because it was so incredibly bright and flashing, and it filled the whole upper space, and you could just see little lightning crackles of this brilliant, sharp, white, cleansing, purifying, and the most terrifying light that I've ever seen in my life. And he said, "Don't fear them, fear me." And that's when he saved my life, because that fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And he took the time to rescue one soul, to show them the first commandment is love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your will, with all your soul. And it starts with fearing him and understanding that his power is terrifying, and his power it trumps anything on this earth, in this universe. And it's omniscient, it's omnipresent, it's everywhere, it's omnipotent. And I saw it and experienced that firsthand. And he is the great I am. And he'll take you to places that you never even dreamed, and lift you up to levels that you've never seen. And that, what happened to me there, like I had holes in my body, in my flesh. No, they didn't crucify me, but they did drain me to an inch of my life, it felt like. And I felt totally broken. And I can't even imagine what Christ felt. This was just a small, small fraction, maybe, of what he felt before he was going to be crucified. And so we suffer in the bitter cup of Christ when we are in his body and in his family. But out of that suffering does come joy, because that's the joy that was set before him, and it's the same joy that was set before us. And he showed me that fear also brought afterwards my ability to stand on my feet, my ability to escape, that he will take out your enemies for you. When that light came in, they were like little bugs in their circle that they thought was so powerful and so safe and protected them. They were like cockroaches, and they all fell down. And God will just, these things, this type of evil, it's like dust at the end. It's like gnats to God, because when he comes in, it's done, it's gone, and it is nothing. Every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Yahushua HaMashiach is the light of the world, the Or HaOlam, and the creator of all of heaven and all of earth, all of it. And all of it is his. And he will take back all of creation with his reigns, and how he wants to rule and reign. So those who are in him will be pretty honored, and what a privilege it will be to be ruling and reigning as priests in that kingdom. in the New Jerusalem template. So what he showed me at the very end, too, that my mind was trying to process in all this, because I was like, literally felt like I was at my last thread of my life, like I was about to die. That light came in, that light activated my spirit, my soul. He gave everything back to me in full, a return, which was also a wonderful, wonderful gift, because he's a wonderful, wonderful father, wonderful parent. He knows all of our needs, even answers our needs before we even ask sometimes. He's so good, and his good and his mercies endure forever. So he showed me in that instance when I got up on my feet and someone came up the elevator to rescue me, that he was already working that resurrection power within me. That resurrection power lives in each one of us. If God lives inside of you, and this is nothing that you can create on your own. And I really feel sorry for the people who think they can, because this is a gift that comes straight from the hand of the Most High. And being in that presence of that holiness and just in awe of what he does for those he loves, his prophets that he's friends with, the children of Israel that he protected and shielded and guarded and fed and nurtured. It is just, it's amazing what he does for us. And that resurrection power is alive in me. It's working every second, every day. The work of the cross is at work every day. Okay, the dark has its mysteries of iniquities, its mysteries of Babylon. But when you understand and start feeding upon the mysteries of heaven that he shows you, the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, the food that Yahushua said he ate that nobody knew about, that is something that is just a relationship and a connection with you and with Elohim, the El Shaddai. So he has many, many names, but that day, God was rescuer, he was deliverer, he was healer, and he was a resurrector of life. And he only preserved my life so that I can bear witness and testimony of these things, to show anyone that's been through SRA that he's above and beyond and capable of fully healing anything that anybody has ever been put through. And that even whatever they come up with in the future, with millions of dollars of buildings and construction and sites and places and things they map out that they think are going to be this new Babylon, that even churches are going to bow the knee to the new Babylon, it's not going to stand, because nothing can stand against. And so I'll just leave it at that. What happened at the very end was I got down the elevator. My body got regenerated. Those black goo snake things were coming out of my eyes as black tears. And it was like burning my face and my skin. So I looked really horrific, I'm sure. But it was such a dichotomy, because I looked horrific still with those things going on and the black tears coming out of my eyes. And my skin, things just, all ripped apart and being healed and barely being able to walk. But then amidst all that was this like strange, like wonderful, calm, glowing, warm light around me. So I got downstairs and there was a powerful man that took me out of there, saved my life. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for him too. And some of the kids that I was with there were like lined up in front of this limo and they were just like looking at me like perplexed, like happy but yet perplexed, like what the hell happened to you? So the Devil's Tower ain't got nothing on Abba Yahuwah. And our Father in heaven loves you and he cares about you. And I would encourage anybody to seek him while he can yet be found, before it's too late. Because the temptations are going to get stronger and this world is going to get darker. And if you don't have and are feasting on the living word and have that resurrection power living inside of you, that life-giving, abundant life in him that he promises us and does give us here every day, and that comforter, then it's going to be much easier for you to stray and to get lost, to fall by the wayside, because it really truly is a narrow way. I mean, there are millions of evil things I saw in not only space, but on Earth, underneath Earth, in the kingdoms of Earth, and yet there's still just this narrow way. And it's easy to accept, it's harder to walk, but the rewards in heaven are going to be so much greater than anything that this earth, this world could ever offer you, beyond your wildest imaginations. So that's what we should put our hope in and our trust, and be content, because contentment awaits for those who call upon the Lord and love the Lord. And he'll give you that contentment and peace, and that power to be able to rise above this world. So, have a wonderful day.